Great. Okay. Thank everyone. Thank you very much for joining today for the first meeting of the North American Numbering Council in 2021. We welcome members of the public watching via live stream and encourage you to submit any questions that you may have to livequestions@fcc.gov. Your questions will be read during the public participation portion of the meeting. Today's meeting is the first virtual NANCY meeting using the Microsoft Teams platform. Before we begin, I want to review for council members some ground rules and best practices for a smooth and successful meeting. First of all, please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. You can use the video function on Teams, but it's not required. We're not asking you to turn it on if you don't feel comfortable doing so. If you have a question or if you would like to make a comment during the designated discussion times, please use the raise hand feature. Both Jordan and I will be able to monitor this and we'll be able to call on you. And when you are speaking, please identify yourself as we may not recognize your voice. And please remember to, again, use mute when you are finished speaking. So does anyone have any questions on the Teams platform or how we're going to proceed before we move on with the meeting? Okay, not hearing any, so that's great. So once more, as a reminder, members of the public with questions for the NANCY, we're asked to submit comments via the FCC's electronic comment filing system. So we have those from beforehand, but if anyone's watching now and wants to submit a question to us as we go, you can send it via email, as I said, to livequestions@fcc.gov. And then we will address those questions when we get to the public participation portion. Now, before we begin, do we have any council members who would like to make any disclosures this morning? Okay, not hearing any. Now I'd like to ask our NANCY Vice Chair, Bruce Williamson. Do you have any comments or remarks you'd like to make before we get started?
Good morning, Chair McKee. No, I have no comments or remarks to make, but I appreciate our first meeting here of 2021 and our chance to meet the acting chair of the FCC. Thank you.
Great. Okay, thanks, Bruce. Well, I'll turn the meeting back over to our acting designated federal officer, Jordan Reth, and she will conduct our roll call. Jordan?
Thank you, Chair McKee. I think what we'll do is we'll do a very quick deviation from the agenda, just so that way we're respectful of the acting chairwoman's time. And I'll turn it back over to you, Jennifer, and if you could proceed therefore, and then we'll send it back to me afterward and we'll do the roll.
Certainly, no problem whatsoever. So I am very pleased to welcome this morning the recently appointed acting chairwoman of the FCC, Jessica Rosenwursel. She will make some opening remarks. Chairwoman Rosenwursel, the call is yours.
Well, thank you and good morning. Let's see to Chair Jennifer McKee, Vice Chair Bruce Williamson, and all the members of NANCY, and also a welcome to everyone who is joining this meeting online. So this is your first meeting in 2021, and it's my first opportunity to address the council as the acting chairwoman of the Federal Communications Commission. So right out of the gate, I just want to thank you for all the hard work you do. Though you all have other responsibilities, you make time for the council's job and you do it with extraordinary professionalism. And I'm especially grateful that you're doing it right now, virtually, given the challenges of the pandemic. Of course, those challenges are real, and this pandemic has proven just how important communications is. It's the link that keeps us connected to friends and family, allows us to safely work from home, attend school, access healthcare, and keep ourselves entertained and informed. And ensuring that communications infrastructure is more accessible, efficient, and secure is at the heart of what NANCY really does. Now today, specifically, I want to thank you for the discussion you'll be having about what's essentially geolocation capability associated with a 988 call. 988, of course, is our new 3-digit suicide hotline number. And this discussion is actually going to help the FCC prepare a report to Congress due later this spring. This is, of course, really important work because every day in this country, thousands of people call the National Suicide and Mental Health Hotline with a plea for help. And you may be familiar with these numbers and statistics, but I think they bear repeating given your work today. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the suicide rate in this country has increased by more than 32% over the past 2 decades. And the numbers are especially chilling when it comes to young people. Suicide is now among the top causes of death for teenagers, and it disproportionately impacts teenage girls, Black teens, and LGBTQ youth. So the designation of 988, this 3-digit dialing code, is a national number for the prevention of suicide, was an important step. I'm glad the FCC has been working on it for years, and I'm glad of the work that my predecessor has done on it as well. But today's discussion is going to bring it a little further into the future as we continue work to implement 988 and discuss how to locate those who are in crisis. And I think that we'll be using your work to make sure that 988 is as powerful a resource as possible. So thank you. I wish you a successful meeting. And if there is anything that the FCC, my office, or the agency staff can do to assist, please don't hesitate to follow up and reach out. Thank you. Appreciate your time today and appreciate all your efforts.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Rosenwursel. We really appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Jordan, should we go back and conduct the roll?
Yes, that sounds great. And thank you for your flexibility. I appreciate that. Okay, so 800 response.
Hi, this is Heather. Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. ACA Connects. Is either Brian or Michael on the call?
Karen Riffen-Kroger
is now joining.
Ad hoc Telecommunications.
Hi, Susan Gately here.
Good morning, Susan.
Good morning.
Alliance for Telecommunications Industry, Addis.
Good morning, this is Jackie Walgermuth.
Good morning, Jackie. AT&T.
Ola Yufus is here.
Good morning, Ola.
Good morning.
Bandwidth.
Greg Rogers is on.
Good morning. Good morning, Greg and LJ. Charter Communications.
Hello, Glenn Klepper's on.
Good morning, Glenn. Comcast.
Good morning, Tim Cagle is on.
Good morning, Tim. Competitive Carriers Association, CCA.
Good morning, it's Alexi Maltis for CCA.
Good morning, Alexi. CTAA.
Hi there, Matt Gerst.
Good morning, Matt. Google.
Good morning, Craig Lennon's here.
Good morning, Craig. Encompass.
Yes, hi, Chris Shipley's here this morning.
Good morning, Chris. Intrado.
Good morning, Bob McCausland is here, Jordan.
Good morning, Bob. Naybrook.
Good morning, Karen Peterson is here.
Good morning, Commissioner Peterson. I have Nasuka next. Is Barry on? Okay. Nevada PUC.
Good morning, this is Chair Williamson.
Good morning, Chair Williamson. NTCA.
Good morning, this is Brian for NTCA.
Good morning, Brian. Peerless.
Good morning, this is Julie Ost with Peerless.
Good morning, Julie. SIP Forum.
Wichaki, I'm here.
Good morning, Rich. All right, next we have T-Mobile.
Good morning, this is Scott Firemuth.
Good morning, Scott. TDS Telecommunications.
Good morning, this is Paul Najedlo.
Good morning, Paul. Telnex.
David Kasem here. Good morning.
Good morning, David. Twilio.
Good morning, Rebecca Thompson for Twilio.
Good morning, Rebecca. US Connect.
Good morning, Bridget Alexander White is here.
Good morning, Bridget. US Telecom.
Good morning, this is Christine Hackman for US Telecom.
Good morning, Christine. Verizon.
Good morning, Dana Crandall here.
Good morning, Dana. Vonage. Is Alan on the call? Okay. And Washington PUS, I'm sorry.
This is Rebecca Beaton, Washington State PUC staff.
Good morning, Rebecca.
Good morning.
And then iConnective.
Chris Drake is here. Good morning.
And Glenn Reynolds is here.
Good morning, Chris and Glenn. And Somos.
Ann Berkowitz is here.
And Joel Bernstein.
Good morning, Ann and Joel. All right, with that, that concludes our roll call from my list. Have I missed anyone? Okay, I'll turn the meeting back over to Chair McKee.
Thank you very much, Jordan. So this is our first meeting after the retirement of our former Nancy designated federal officer, Marilyn Jones. And Marilyn had been the DFO for the Nancy since 2006. We all greatly miss her, but I assure you all join in me in congratulating her on her retirement and in thanking her for her many, many years of very valuable service and friendship. Now, I think we have a few people who'd like to say a few words on this subject. So Bob McCausland, are you on?
I am, Chair McKee, yes. And we have nearly 20 people who have asked to provide brief comments. And because we have so many, I alphabetized the list and I moved a few around in order to accommodate their schedules. But I'll start. Marilyn, when you told us you were retiring, I was quite excited for you, but I was also a little bit apprehensive since I know how much you loved working at the commission and doing what you did as our DFO, designated federal officer. And I knew how much you would miss all of that. Of course, you also knew how much we would miss you. That is why I'm so happy that you were able to join us today and happy to have the opportunity to again thank you and tell you how much you will be missed. I sincerely appreciate both your commitment to all of us and your friendship, and I wish you the very best always. Now, moving down the list, Michelle Thomas from T-Mobile, I put you first because of scheduling issues. If you're on the line, please proceed. We'll come back to Michelle. If you're speaking, Michelle, you're muted. Rebecca Beaton, Washington Commission.
This is Rebecca Beaton. Marilyn, I want to say on behalf of state PUC staff members nationwide, thank you for your service. You've been an invaluable resource and a steady guide for many, many years, and you've literally ushered in generations of state staff members. You've educated us, you've guided us on process and procedure, you've assured state concerns were heard by the industry and by government. You handled so many of the controversies and debates with grace and good humor. Your career was in the midst of really an enormously exciting and challenging and changing time and technology, and we certainly appreciate that you were always available and responded to our very persistent and constant requests. Do know that you're admired, you're known for your diligence, your ethics, your integrity, but most of all for your decency and your kindness. Thank you again and best wishes for all your new endeavors. Take care.
Thank you, Rebecca. David Kasem and Sarah Halco. Telnix. If you're speaking, you're muted. I'll move down to Dana Crandall, Verizon.
Hi, Marilyn. I just wanted to echo the comments from Bob and from Rebecca. Thank you for all your hard work. Thank you for your support over the years, and best wishes in your retirement.
Thank you, Dana. Susan Gately, Ad Hoc.
Hi, Marilyn. As a relative newbie on Nancy, I wanted to thank you for being as welcoming and helpful as you have been to somebody new. I had never participated in a group like this previously and had a lot of silly questions. And just needed some guidance in the beginning. You couldn't have been more helpful. You were always, always on top of everything. So thank you so much. You made me feel part of the group immediately, and I'm sure you've done that for many, many folks over the years.
Thank you, Susan. Matt Gerst, CTIA.
Hi, Marilyn. Just want to associate myself and CTIA and the wireless providers that we represent with the comments that have already been made. We greatly appreciate your service to the commission, to this committee, and echo the thoughts of the changes in the industry that you've helped to oversee and usher in that have benefited both the industry and consumers. And wish you the best in your retirement.
Thank you, Matt. Tim Cagle, Beth Scherzay, Comcast.
Yes, thank you, Bob. Good morning, Marilyn. Tim Cagle. In my capacity as Comcast, I just want to say it's been such a pleasure to have worked with you. You are the consummate professional. In my capacity as a co-chair of the NAPA LLC, I also want to thank you on behalf of the NAPA for your steady hand, your leadership, especially through the challenging times of transitioning the NPAC. And as an American, I want to thank you for your service to our great country. I wish you every success in your retirement. Enjoy.
Thank you, Tim. Rosemary, Karen Rippenkroger, and Michelle Thomas, who I just
is now
heard
joining.
T-Mobile.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is Rosemary. Michelle Thomas, are you on the line?
I am, Rosemary, and I'm sorry about the technical difficulty. I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, to the Nancy Chair for the opportunity to join and just share brief congratulations and well wishes to Marilyn Boone. On behalf of T-Mobile and all of our representatives who support the Nancy and the working group, I want to thank you, Marilyn, for your grace and your wisdom throughout your tenure as the DFO. You've made numerous contributions to all of our efforts, and most notably on behalf of consumers. We are grateful for your numerous contributions as a result of your dedication, and we wish you all the best in your next chapter.
Thank you, Rosemary. Karen?
Hi, thank you, Michelle.
Okay. Rosemary, I'll let you go first, and then I'll go last.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Bob. I had the privilege of working closely with Marilyn Jones on the Nancy for as long as she was part of this group, and before she was part of this group, she worked with Sanford Williams and Regina Brown on some numbering issues. It's been a long time. I feel like we sort of grew up in the Nancy alongside each other. We relied on each other with trust being the center core of our working relationship, which was so fantastic. We were able to push so many mountains out of the way to get a remarkable amount of work done on so many different numbering issues with so many of you that are still on the call today. It's just, she was standing alongside of me when I worked and I traveled extensively for so many years, and she just helped me push through law school and seminary. I can remember being so overwhelmed with work and travel and lack of sleep over the years, and talking to Marilyn she always had a positive attitude. She always had such compassion, and she inspired me to be the best version of myself as she led by example, working for the FCC and her military service at the same time. I believe we were born with our own special, unique character trait that sets us apart from everyone else. And I think that everyone that knows Marilyn would agree that hers is integrity. Her integrity bar is set so high that it makes everyone that is friends with her or works with her a better person. Knowing without question that every single time I picked up the phone to call her with whatever problem or issue I had was going to be welcomed with a smile and a sincere heart, and the advice and guidance I was going to receive was top notch, always truthful, always vetted by her high integrity. That meant the world to me. What a blessing she has been to all of us, and I think she has earned the phrase in her work life, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Jordan is doing a fantastic job, but you will certainly be a hard act to follow, Marilyn. Thank you. And now
Hi.
Karen Rippenkroger.
Hi, this is Karen Rippenkroger. I want to express my appreciation to you, Marilyn, for all the support that you have provided to the NAOWG and the former NOWG. And during my tenure as co-chair of the NOWG, you provided me and my co-chairs excellent support in all of our activities, which included the monthly calls, the annual operational reviews, and annual NAMPA PA performance reviews. You were always available to answer questions and to provide guidance in the resolution of any issues or concerns. You just made our job so much easier, and for that I am so thankful, as I'm sure all the current and former co-chairs of the NAOWG, NOWG are, and you will definitely be missed. I wish you much happiness on your next adventure. Thank you.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Karen, Rosemary, and Michelle. And speaking of NAOWG, Phil Lindsay, Lumen.
Good morning. Thank you, Bob. Good morning, Marilyn. I want to thank you so much for your leadership. You've led me through when I initially came on board of the Nancy and quickly moved into a chair position. Your leadership was insurmountable. And what I thought was supposed to be kind of a business as usual over the last couple of years seemed anything but the business as usual through impromptu
is now exiting.
Impromptu exit of one of our vendors, and the myriad of other Nancy working groups. You've just been unstoppable and just a great person to work with. You will be missed tremendously. Thank you, and enjoy your retirement.
For sure. Thank you, Phil. Paul at TDS Telecom.
Good morning, Marilyn. I really just want to thank you for everything that you have done, and it really has been a pleasure working with you. I think everyone else has really said it quite well, and we really do wish you the best in your retirement. So thank you again.
Thank you, Paul. Julie at Peerless Network.
Thank you for the opportunity for speaking. I've known Marilyn for a long time, but like many, I knew her mainly through email and phone calls. I don't know about how all of you do this, but for me, when I talk to someone on the phone or email for a long time, you get this picture in your mind of what the person looks like. When I was able to meet Marilyn in person, her kindness that was always in her ever timely emails was also in her face, and just such a gracious person. And I'm so grateful for her thoughtfulness and willingness to always help. So thank you, Marilyn, for your service and your kindness, and best of luck in your retirement, and have fun.
Thank you, Julie. Greg Rogers, Lisa Jill Freeman at Bandwidth.
Hi, Marilyn. I'll jump in and quickly say that it's great that you're joining us here today, and you didn't have the chance to sneak away without us having the opportunity to do this, and express our thanks to you directly for all of your work over all the years. Congratulations on your retirement, and certainly good luck with all that lies ahead. All the best from me and from Bandwidth. We've enjoyed working with you over all the years, certainly, and would echo all of the comments that people have made so far. Your kindness, your dedication, your support has all been very much appreciated, and it's been a true pleasure.
Thank you, Greg. Richard Shockey, SIP Forum, and everything else that you do, Richard.
Hey, Marilyn, I'll try and make this relatively quick and stuff like that, but way to go. Awesome, dear. Thank you so much for your help and friendship over, I believe it's now the 8 years that I've been on the Nancy, and get it vaccinated as quickly as possible, okay? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rich. And Madam Chair, of course, there were several people who wanted to speak who apparently were having technical issues earlier. If I may, I'll open the floor for those folks or anyone else to make brief comments with respect to Marilyn, honoring Marilyn.
Hi, David Kasem here from Telnex. Marilyn, as a relative newcomer, there was just so much for us to learn. You were there every step of the way to help us figure things out. Thank you for being so helpful to an emerging part of the industry. We wish you all the best.
Thank you, David. Others? With that, Madam Chair,
Oh, no, I
thank you.
think we have
Good morning. This is Karen Charles Peterson of NARUC.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thank you. This is Karen Charles Peterson of NARUC. Marilyn, you've been amazing and tremendous, and from the entire organization of NARUC, we just want to say thank you for your dedication and your support over the years. We wish you the best of luck in retirement. Thank you.
Okay, and Bob, we have a few people with their hands raised too. I'm not sure if you can see that, but so I can see Ola from AT&T.
Yes, hi. I want to say on behalf of everybody at AT&T, we want to wish you happy retirement, Marilyn. Especially myself, having been probably the newest member of Nancy. It's just been a year that I was appointed under a very difficult circumstance for our company that we lost the AT&T representative who passed on and went to the Lord. And I was just appointed to come fill that spot. I did not know what I was getting into, but you made my orientation very smooth, and I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Thank you, Ola. Christine from US Telecom.
Thank you. Marilyn, from US Telecom's perspective, just echoing everything everyone said, there's no way that we can begin to list all of your wonderful contributions and accomplishments that you've made to the FCC and the numbering community. And on a personal note, I've gotten the privilege of working with you since I was an intern in CPD. And while my work with you has only overlapped very recently, as I've just recently joined the Nancy, I am so thankful and fortunate to have had your friendship, mentorship, and have learned so much from you over the years, and wish you well in your retirement, but hope you're not going too far because we're going to miss you.
Thanks, Christine. Michelle Slater.
This is Michelle. I just want to let everyone know that Marilyn is watching on the live. She is not. She had an unscheduled Army call this morning, but she's multitasking as usual, and she's tearing up. And she said, "Thank you all for the beautiful comments." She can't get on the call right now, but she hears you, and she's heard every one of you. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for that, Michelle. Ann Berkowitz.
Hi, yep, from Somos. Marilyn, I can't say anything that anybody else didn't say. Certainly, the NAMPA team at Somos also talks about working way back to 2006. I got to tell you, I will miss you as sort of the voice of reason during some chaos, and God knows I love your laughter. You were always great there, great sense of humor, and you will be very missed. Best of luck and enjoy, just enjoy.
Great, thank you, Ann. Glenn Reynolds.
I think Ann actually said it quite well. Having gone way, way, way back with Marilyn, long before Nancy's, even before the Nancy participation, I just want to say on my personal behalf, sort of, thank you so much for being such a great friend and a great voice of reason, and all the best in the future. Thanks.
Great, thanks, Glenn. Glenn Klepper.
Hi, Marilyn. Just echoing everyone's comments, and thank you for being so supportive. Best wishes in the future. Thank you, Marilyn.
Great, thanks, Glenn. Jackie Wolgemuth.
Hi, Marilyn. I just wanted to thank you for the mentoring that you provided me in the years that I've been in the Nancy. I appreciate everything that you did to support the CATA working group. And I just wish you the very best in your retirement.
Great, thank you. Mike Jacobs.
So I'm gonna, this is really sort of a tough act to follow. I just want to essentially say what they said, because everyone has said such nice things, all of which are completely apt. I wish Marilyn the very best on behalf of ACA Connects, as well as myself. I'll just read a little bit of what I sent her a note shortly after the new year, because there's so much I want to say, but this will actually keep me in check here. So I just wrote, Marilyn, just want to send along my best wishes to you. I always enjoyed working with you, both as a colleague and outside the commission. And it's hard to imagine the Nancy without you and all the numbering knowledge that now has literally and figuratively left the building. But you have earned this ability, and I have stressed earned this ability to ride into the FCC sunset with time for a whole nother life awaiting you. You are a true class act, and I always wish the best for you. Thank you for being the great person you are and for your devoted and skilled service to the country, both in civilian clothes and in fatigues.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I think that's the last of the hands raised that I see. Is there anyone else that would like to say anything before we move on? Okay, and just in closing, just want to say it's a very, very fitting tribute to a wonderful public servant. And just on a personal note, just want to thank you so much, Marilyn, as it's come through in the comments, mostly for your kindness and your extreme patience. It really does mean a lot to me, and I wish you all the best. Okay, now moving on with our announcements and recent news, we do have one membership update. Isaac Schloss will replace Carl Koster as a representative for PACE, which is a non-voting member of the Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group. Welcome, Isaac. Congratulations on your appointment, and we look forward to working with you. Next up on the agenda, we will have an update from the STI-GA, but before we do that, I understand that Nancy member Richard Shockey has something to say before we hear the report. Rich?
Yes. Let me say thank you very much. What I have disclosed to the Wireline Competition Bureau and the FCC's Office of General Counsel that I have a private contract with Ofcom, who is the national communications regulator of the United Kingdom, on call authentication, stir shaken, and other related matters. The Office of General Counsel has asked me, with an abundance of caution, and which I completely agree with, for me to drop off this call at this particular point and rejoin shortly thereafter in about 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much for letting us know. And now we will get the update from Brent Struthers, who is the director of the STI-GA. Brent, the call is yours.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Thank you, Vice Chair McKee and Vice Chair Williamson. Thank you all for allowing me to provide an update today. First off, I need to say that I really appreciate you always put me first on the agenda, but I also want to say that always following Chairman Pai and now Acting Chairwoman Rosenwursel, and today all congratulatory messages to Marilyn Jones, who's just a tremendous person. You give me tough duty. So I'm going to do my best to keep things interesting for you for a little bit, and I will do my darndest for all the rest of the speakers today to lower the bar for you. So if you can go to the next slide, I will provide my update. So in terms of registration, when I last updated you in December, the list of authorized service providers has increased from 64 last December to, as you can see, we've now hit the century mark. There's another 23 service providers who are approved and through staging. That means they've gotten through their testing and they've just got to finish up their final paperwork before they too can be listed as authorized service providers. We've got another 70 or so that are pending. So there's a lot of activity in the registration. The GA is working to ensure that the STI-PA systems are ready for the expected increase in service provider registrations this year. We're already obviously seeing some of that increase. That's on the registration. On the certification authorities, I've got more good news there. You can see at the end of the year, the STI-GA board approved an 8th STI-CA, the 6th one to serve the broader industry. That's Peering Hub. They've been added to the list of STI-CAs available to assign certificates to the authorized service providers on the STIPA website. The Policy Management Authority, and I update y'all on this every time, it's a body that's led by iConnected and filled out by a number of STI technical committee members, and their role is to do a detailed review of the certification practice statements that are filed by these prospective CAs. The PMA has just approved another certification practice statement for a prospective CA, and the board is currently reviewing that one. So we may well have a 7th STI CA serving the broader industry fairly soon. So it's the GA is basically trying to make sure that the service providers that are authorized have a very competitive list of CAs from which to choose. So far, so good. On the policy changes, the board has reviewed the FCC's December further notice of proposed rulemaking focused on the board's SBC token revocation process. The board's currently considering how and if it will respond to that FNPRM. The board is also currently in the process of reviewing 2 separate policies that were recently submitted. One of those has to do with the support of delegate certificates in the Shaken ecosystem, and the other one has to do with toll-free call authentication when providers who use toll-free numbers send outbound calls from those toll-free numbers. So getting those, getting REST ports access to SBC tokens so that they can assign delegate certificates so enterprises can sign calls and when they use outbound calling using toll-free numbers. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. In terms of outreach efforts, along with speaking at the SIP Forum SIPNOC event in December, which was shortly after the NANCI meeting on December 3rd, the STIGA has hosted 2 of its own webinars since the NANCI last met. The first webinar was just hours after NANCI meeting on December 3rd, getting that confused with the SIPNOC, which was actually December 10th, I guess. It focused on educating service providers about the STIPA registration process. For that webinar, we had over 300 people registered. We had more than 200 actually attend live, and we've gotten 170 or so playbacks of the webinar as well. The second webinar was held on January 21st. It focused on how authorized service providers could choose and work with an STI-CA to get the certificates that they need to sign calls. That webinar had over 250 people registered and about 170 attending live. Both webinars were recorded, and the link to the recording was sent to all the registrants. You can still register and get the link. We have one more webinar planned for February 25th, and we're working to finalize that subject matter now. The goal for this webinar, as it has been for all the webinars, is to assist the industry with its stir shaking implementation. We want to make sure service providers know how to implement and what to do once they implement, and help the industry with their ongoing caller ID authentication efforts. There's one more thing I want to update the board on that is not on my slide, and let me get to that. The year-end report. The board is going to release its 2020 year-end report today. We'll put that up on the STIGA website a little later today. If you can go back to the first page, the first slide, that would be helpful. And I'll show you the link to the STIGA website if you can do that. Well, it's not happening. If you go to the STIGA website, you'll see that slide. You'll see the report posted up there today, this afternoon. So the report details the work of the governance authority to set up and solidify both the stir shake and technical and policy frameworks throughout 2020. While the GA was launched in 2018 and the STIPA in 2019, and 2 CAs debuted in 2019, 2020 was really the year everything kind of came together, enabling the industry to begin more broadly implementing stir shake and call authentication. So it's a big year. The report details the work that we did, and there you have the link for the STIGA website. If you go there this afternoon, we'll post that report up there, and that's it for my report. I'm happy to take any questions. All right,
Okay.
maybe we'll tell Rich Shockey he can rejoin.
Great. Okay, thank you very much, Brent. Appreciate that update. So next up on the agenda, we're going to hear from Teresa Patton, who is the co-chair of the North American Portability Management LLC. And Teresa, I will turn the call over to you.
Thank you, and good morning. I'd like to start our report by providing just a few of the accomplishments of iConnected as the LMPA. In their second year, the industry continued to receive excellent service and support, which could be seen in the overall response to the annual NPAC user satisfaction survey, which resulted in a user rating of very satisfied. Additionally, the number of TNs maintained in the NPAC increased by 44 million. The NPAC performed over 344 million routing updates from pooling and porting activities. They successfully implemented 2 new releases, which included 20 change orders. The annual NPAC disaster recovery and business continuity exercises were again successfully completed, as well as 52 industry maintenance windows. In regards to new statements of work and contract amendments, SAU 27 was requested by the NPIF in support of change order 554, which improves the XML LSMS query recovery process. This is a no-cost SOW to the industry. And in regards to NPAC activity, there will be a disaster recovery exercise on February 20th and 21st, and an upcoming release 5.0.2, which is targeted for an April 2021 deployment, which will contain operational improvements and usability enhancements. The Contract Implementation Committee approved 2 new finding reports for PTRS users, and the annual certification qualification process for PTRS users for 2021 has been initiated and has a completion anticipated in the 3rd quarter. That's the end of my report. Are there any questions?
Okay, not hearing any questions, so thank you very much, Teresa. I appreciate that. And we will now move on to hear updates from our Numbering Administration Oversight Working Group. And presenting for this group is co-chair Phil Lindsay. Phil, the call is yours.
Thank you, Chair McKee. And my name is Philip Lindsay with Lumen Technologies. I share the co-chair role with Robert or Bob McCausland from Entrado Communications and Betty Sanders of Charter. We also have some FCC liaisons, Bill Anderley, Merva Charles, and Karen Schroeder. And as we move on to the next slide, folks may note that our mission statement has changed a little bit since December. We entered into a new or the FCC entered into a new contract with Somos that encompasses 2 elements, which is the NAMPA or numbering North American Numbering Plan Administration. That is Somos is the North American Numbering Plan Administrator. In that function, going forward as we go through these quarterly readouts, when we refer to NAMPA, it's going to encompass all of the number administrating functions such as code administration, as well as pooling administration, those kinds of functions. In addition to that, then this the additional element of this contract includes the Reassign numbers database administration.
Is now joining.
And then so under this contract oversight of the NAOWG, we will be overseeing the billing and collections agent, the North American Numbering Plan Administrator, and that also then includes the Reassign numbers database as one contract for those last 2 items there. And then in addition to that, we have some oversight of the number portability industry forum, which we'll get into a little bit later in this presentation. So the contract status, so again, we have entered into a new contract with Somos as of December 1st. That's a 5-year base duration plus 3 one-year optional extensions, and the current expiration will be November 30th of 2025. And of course, this replaces the bridge contracts that were previously in place. The BNC agent billing and collections contract went into effect May 1st, and that was also a 5-year duration. The activities of the contract oversight or the NAOWG since the last NANCY meeting, we've continued our monthly review of deliverables, including the addition of the 988 implementation, the monthly review of the RNDA, which we had our initial monthly review, and there was also a public notice that released around the requirements for providing seed data for the development of that database. The monthly review deliverables for the BNC agent, and in the last meeting we reviewed the development of the costs for the R&D, the transition costs of the NAMPA, and the annual operational review. And then also we have that oversight of the number portability industry forum, which will provide a little more detail later. The next item. So the NAMPA, the newly awarded contract, include combining the number administration systems, the pooling administration system, and the routing number administration system. So, so the first portion of the costs associated with these elements will be for that effort of combining that system in order to create some efficiencies there. So we began that work to combine that within the monthly reports. Previously, we had separate readouts for the NAMPA and the PA. We are now on the verge of having those reports combined to help create some efficiencies there as well. So, and then the addition of an evaluation matrix to help us summarize accomplishments throughout the year. The next item is the 988 implementation. This is very similar to last month's or last quarter's readout. January 7th meeting was held to provide updates on the milestones, where 988 is also an NXX, removal of North Dakota 701, where they were able to receive the 988 NXX code back in order to reduce the number of transitions to 10-digit dialing for North Dakota. And one thing I don't have on here, we just received notice of a reminder of the upcoming meeting, which will be February 11th, I believe. And then the reporting obviously will conclude once we complete, once the June 16th, 2022 deadline is reached. Next item. So reassign numbers administration. So also as part of the new contract, we are now overseeing the contract for the reassigned numbering database administrator. We are developing those the monthly reporting requirements and then the metrics associated with the progress. There was a public notice released providing technical specifications for the reassigned numbers database reporting. I have that referenced here. We did receive some clarification that public notice is specific to the seed data, that in other words, that initial data that has been collected by service providers since I think it was in July timeframe. Service providers have been collecting that data, so that initial load of data is what this is applying to. It also identifies the telephone number report format, the telephone number report submission, and kind of the batch ID designation that's specific to the seed data upload. And then a tentative or a proposed website that you see here. And then additional information associated with the ongoing reporting are are yet to be provided. So the BNC agent, the NAMPA transition, NAS, PAS, and RNAS to a single system. Those costs are forecasted for the first 3 months of the contract. Outside of that or beyond that, we're looking at a 4.2% increase on ongoing costs, excluding those first 3 months of transition costs. The R&D initial development, the costs forecasted for those costs are forecasted for the first 6 months of the contract, and the entire fund will be distributed within those first 6 months for that database development. There's obviously no then cost beyond that initial 6-month development. The BNC, we also then engaged with the BNC agent on the operational review, the annual operational review, and this provides kind of a snapshot and kind of a summary of the elements that we review in that operational review, and kind of highlights kind of the significance of the BNC agent's work with a very minimal staff, but it has, as you can see, some of the items here are fairly significant. So the responsibilities essentially are pursuant to 47 CFR 5216. We have a monthly and quarterly metrics. We establish the budget. We review monthly the budget of actuals and forecasts. They also develop the contribution factor based on all of the service providers' revenues and their portion of the administration costs associated with numbering, and then the collections of the annual monthly fees. So they do the actual collections, and then they also apply the red light rule where necessary, and then they also are subject to multiple federal and external financial audits as well. So a lot of work that's done with a minimal staff in that regard. So the numbering portability industry forum, the tri-chairs, Deb Tucker of Verizon, Teresa Patton of AT&T, and Randy Ryan of Comcast. We have received the regular scheduled meetings throughout at least the first half of this year. We have not received any items that need the attention of the NANCY, so we don't have any kind of action items or anything around this, but it's there, and it's basically a path for the MPIF to bring items in that are pertinent to the NANCY and require NANCY attention. So I just wanted to put that out there. Work continues, and upon the point in time that NANCY needs to take some action, we'll receive some communication, and we'll be presenting to the NANCY in the future. It's not expected that this will be a common occurrence. It may only happen a couple times, if that, a year. So just kind of want to give folks some context to this oversight and kind of where the NANCY kind of sits with regard to the work effort of this forum. So next item. So that is wrapping this up. This is a list of all the members of the NAOWG. I want to thank each and every one of them. It is one of the most active, and there's a significant participation of these members. So it's not like you would typically see the 80-20 rule where 20% do the work and 80 do not. This is a very involved group, and I want to extend my thank you to everybody on this list for their efforts in this oversight, because there's quite a bit that goes on, and we do it in basically once a month meetings. It's a fairly long meeting, but it's very productive. So I want to thank everybody for that. And then these are our future meetings throughout 2021. You'll notice it stops September 30th, and I expect that date will probably change, as that's pretty much the last day of the month, and I'm thinking we'll probably have a NANCY meeting prior to that, which will be the conclusion of this charter. So we're planning on these meetings, but they'll they may be adjusted as we get Nancy's schedules and other conflicts that may arise. So again, here's my contact with Bob's and Betty's contacts. If you have any questions outside of the Nancy, please feel free to reach out to any of us and we'll get you whatever answer you need. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much for that presentation, Phil. And also thanks to you and all the members of the NAOWG for all of your ongoing hard work. So next on our agenda, we're going to hear from FCC staff a presentation on the 988 item, and they can give us some background and context before we get into our informal discussion on that topic. So we are going to be hearing from Jesse Goodwin, who's an attorney advisor in the Wireline Competition Bureau. And Jesse, if you're ready, if you could give us your presentation, we would appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks. Hi all, this is Jesse Goodwin. As stated, I'm an attorney advisor with WCB, and I'll just be giving a brief overview and background of 988 to facilitate the discussion. Could we go to the next slide? So the FCC has designated 988 for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline to be available July 16th, 2022. 988 is not yet active. If you want to call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, call 1-800-273-TALK. That said, although 988 is not yet active nationwide, some carriers, mostly wireless, have already implemented it. So this presentation will cover 988's background, the order which designated 988, the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act of 2020 that Congress passed, a petition for reconsideration, and our next steps at the Commission. So first of all, on December 16th, 2019, the FCC released a notice of proposed rulemaking that proposed to designate 988 as the 3-digit dialing code for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. We received a robust record of comments from the mental health community, telecommunications companies, and other interested parties. On July 16th, 2020, the FCC adopted a report and order that adopted 988 as the 3-digit code for the Lifeline and required providers to implement 988 within 2 years. The order requires all telecommunications carriers, interconnected voice over internet protocol providers, and one-way VoIP providers to make any network changes necessary to ensure that users can dial 988 to reach the Lifeline by July 16th, 2022. Providers will route calls to 988 to the existing toll-free access number, which again is 1-800-273-TALK. It requires that covered providers implement 10-digit dialing in areas that both use 7-digit dialing and 988 as the first 3 digits of a number. And currently, the North American Numbering Plan Administrator is working with providers toward implementation. So, the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act of 2020. On October 17th, Congress enacted this act. The act designates 988 as the universal telephone number within the United States for the purpose of the National Suicide Prevention and Mental Health Crisis Hotline System operating through the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, with designation occurring 1 year after enactment. It also requires that the Commission submit a report that details the status of fees collected and distributed by government subdivisions and Indian tribes, as well as findings about on the amount of revenues obligated or expended thereby for any purposes other than the purpose for which those fees or charges are specified. Additionally, it requires the Commission to submit a report that examines the feasibility and cost of including an automatic dispatchable location that would be conveyed with a 988 call, regardless of the technological platform used, and including with calls from multi-line telephone systems. Following adoption of the order, the communications quality advocates filed a petition for reconsideration requesting that the Commission revise its order to require implementation of text to 988 and support for DVC capability. Comments and replies were due in December. So next steps. So first of all, the fee accountability report that I mentioned is due not later than 2 years after enactment of the National Suicide Hotline Designation Act of 2020. The Commission has released a public notice also that clarified that the implementation date of July 2022 did not change as a result of the Act, which again had set designation to occur 1 year after enactment. The public notice also requested comments regarding the geolocation report to Congress that is due in April 2021. Comments were received in December and replies in January. And provided here are some contact information as well as links to the various materials that were mentioned, including to the order itself, the act, and for the petition for reconsideration.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jesse. And does anyone have any questions about the status? Okay, if not, then we will turn to the main point of discussion for today's meeting, which is to have an informal discussion of the cost and feasibility of including an automatic dispatchable location with a 988 call. And again, as Jesse mentioned, this discussion is going to facilitate the Commission's preparation of the congressional report, which is due in April. So we want to be sure to focus on the asks as directed by the Commission's public notice, which are cost, financial and non-monetary, the technical feasibility of doing this dispatchable location, and then any consumer privacy issues that might be raised. This is an incredibly important topic, as Chairwoman Rosenwursel alluded to, will benefit the American public, and I thank you all for joining today for what I'm sure will be a robust and thoughtful discussion. Please remember to use the raise hand function so we may have an orderly discussion. And with that, I will open it up for discussion. Okay, Matt Gerst, see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair McKee. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep, we can hear you.
Great. So this is Matt Gerst of CTIA. First, I want to add, there was a call for disclosures earlier, and I just want to make sure it's known that I am a member of the Board of Directors for the Universal Service Administrative Company, assigned to that role by the Chairman of the FCC. I don't imagine there are issues that are going to be raised in this body that are relevant to USAC, but if there are, I certainly will recuse myself from those discussions. So with that, I wanted to thank you, Chairman McKee, and the FCC staff and Acting Chairwoman Rosenwursel for opening this dialogue in the North American Numbering Council around 988 and geolocation. I thought I'd give to sort of kick off the discussion here, our thoughts from the wireless perspective, the mobile wireless perspective, on how automated location information is generated and used today, particularly for 911 calls, and what that tells us about some of the questions and challenges and potential benefits of supporting location information with 988 calls. And then I, welcome thoughts and discussion on this. I've had a number of years of experience working on this issue of location information with 911 through CTIA, and happy to offer our thoughts and in response to any questions that folks have about this issue. But thought just would level set with everyone from a technical perspective and sort of summarize what our comments said in the record on this issue and what we saw on the record on this issue as well. Just to start off, I want to associate ourselves with Acting Chairwoman Rosenwursel's comments today on the importance of this issue, and also, applaud this group. Applaud this group for its efforts over the last few years to focus and support the concept of making it easier for people in mental health crisis to get the services and help they need through 988. This body has been absolutely instrumental to making that feasible. And, as Jesse noted, I'm pleased to say that wireless providers have been moving fast to implement 988 before the July 2022 deadline. And, we're hopeful that that will lead to better outcomes for many of the people who need it. And, I know that the industry is working very hard writ large to, support the capability by July of next year. I also want to flag, as Jesse noted, that there was a petition from advocates for people with disabilities to support text 988, and we filed comments in support of that petition, consistent with provider support of text to 911 today. And so to the extent that that commission moves forward on that issue, that could also be beneficial to people with disabilities who might not otherwise be able to call 911, call 988, getting the help and services that they need as well. So overall, CTIA and the wireless industry support Congress's goal and the commission's goal and everybody on this committee's goal of ensuring that Americans in mental health crisis have ready access to the services and support they need. Among many stakeholders in this proceeding, CTI and its member companies throughout the mobile wireless ecosystem are ready to assist the commission and Congress as they're gathering more information about how to make the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline as effective as possible. And I think if you take a look at the record that the commission staff hyperlinked for all of us, I think you'll see that sentiment borne out in the comments, demonstrating that the provision of automated location information, including dispatchable location, which I'll talk about why that's sort of a subset of the threshold issue of automated location information. Providing that information with 988 calls could produce certain public interest benefits, including enabling the Lifeline to route 988 calls to local crisis centers within the same geographic area as the caller. And so that potentially is a very important feature for 988 that we should all be thinking about and working towards. However, I think the record also reflects the significant technical, operational, and policy issues, including privacy questions faced by the National Lifeline, local crisis centers, public safety answering points that respond to our 911 calls, and the communications industry writ large that do warrant further consideration as the Commission's preparing its report to Congress, as noted earlier. So for this reason, I'll sum up, and I'll get into the details in a second, that CTIA and others have encouraged the Commission to recommend to Congress that stakeholders, experts be convened to develop recommendations that address both the technical and the operational considerations for delivering location information with 988 calls. So a quick summary and reminder about how location information is provided with mobile wireless calls today. So it is a careful balance between your handset capability, the network, and the public safety answering point that was developed relatively over the last 20 years, as well as various policy considerations by Congress and the FCC, particularly around issues of privacy. So when you call 911, we're presuming that you want to be found because you're saying, I want first responders who are the police, fire, EMS to find you and respond to your emergency. And so for that reason, in your wireless handset, you have choices in how location services are used. You can turn them off entirely, or you could specify them to particular apps. But when you make a 911 call, those choices are overridden by a policy determination by Congress and the FCC that you're waiving your privacy considerations to get help from 911. And so in order to implement that capability, as well as complete the 911 call, the handset enters into an emergency mode. There's a very specific set of protocols within the handset that are tightly controlled to make sure that it's going to work properly. And I will say this issue of overriding privacy determinations might not be the same case in 988. And I think we saw that in the record, that some people calling 988 might have privacy concerns. So in 911 calling mode, the handsets, overriding the privacy capabilities turns on all the sensors in your handset. You're probably most familiar with GPS, but there are other capabilities there that will be turned on to produce horizontal XY latitude longitude information. And FCC rules require that that information be accurate to within 50 meters for 70% of 911 calls, and actually going up to 80% this April. And that's been achieved through innovative solutions. So a couple of years ago, you may recall that the big debate was, why can Uber find me but 911 can't? And today we've largely addressed that issue through solutions that called device-based hybrid that utilize all these different technologies. And this all happens in the handset and then is transmitted to the network. The network has to route the call immediately, even without this location capability, without all this location information having been collected, so they can get the call responded to as quickly as possible. And then once the location information is available, usually within 30 seconds or so, or less sometimes, then the public safety answering point actually has to collect the information from the network and then utilize it with their own equipment to be able to dispatch the first responders. So all of this effort has developed over a 20-year history. And so adding features to 911 to this type of emergency mode capability is not a small thing. I mean, it's frequently said that that type of calling capability are part of the crown jewels of a wireless handset. It requires standards, requires testing, requires potentially new devices. So there's a lot that goes into producing location information for a call. As far as dispatchable location, I talked about XY horizontal location information, latitude, longitude. Dispatchable location is this specific idea that it would be easier for public safety to respond to a call if they had your address of where you're calling from, plus additional information about where you might be in that particular building if you're indoors. And it's a great idea and something that we've been very supportive of the concept of and working hard to try to implement in a number of different ways. CTIA, in fact, tried to get one approach going over the last few years, but weren't successful in getting industry support to make that work. There are other approaches being considered, proprietary databases and user-generated information, like if in your handset they know you've entered your home address and you're calling from that place. If we can provide that type of information, that might be dispatchable location. But there's still a lot of discussion about how all that works. So I think that's important, as this group has been asked to look at dispatchable location, to recognize that for mobile wireless, it's actually a subset of the overall location information challenge. So this brings me to 988, and I'll complete my thoughts here in a second and welcome others and questions. But 988 challenges are, in terms of supporting location information, are technical. There's lots of effort and time that would be needed to support 988 in the handsets and the networks. And we have to think about that in the context of both how and whether location information would be used as part of a 988 call. So the how question is, okay, let's say we could possibly get the standards and testing and everything done in time, in a way that we could get location information to 988. How is that information going to be used? And I think you saw some diversity of opinion. The National Lifeline seemed to say that they could use it. That'd be great if they have the equipment to do that, but they also need to have the ability to transfer that to local crisis centers. Will the local crisis centers have that capability, the same capability that PSAPs have today in 911? There's a question of whether there should be this type of information transmitted with 988. There's privacy questions. There's a lot of folks in the record saying, people who are in mental health crisis want to retain their privacy. It's not the same as a 911 call. And then further, there's some talk about, well, location information could be helpful if we need to dispatch, first responders or local mobile crisis teams. And that's a great concept, and I think we want to support that idea. But the record also suggested that was only necessary in a pretty limited number of cases. So if that's the case, are there other ways we can address this issue of knowing more about the caller to provide support to those mobile crisis teams or local first responders than going through the effort of developing all this capability in the emergency mode? So all these questions are good ones, and good problems to have in the sense that we have technologies and ideas and smart people to think about them, but it requires further discussion around 988. So for that reason, we hope you all agree with us that what needs to happen here is further discussion among experts and to come up with the recommendations around these issues, and that hopefully the commission will recommend that to Congress. And with that, I will turn over the floor and welcome your questions.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Any questions for Matt before we move on to another speaker? Okay, if not, then Glenn Klepper, so your hand is raised. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, this is Glenn Klepper with Charter. Again, thanks for the opportunity to comment on this important topic. Some of this may echo some of the points Matt with CTI just made, but starting with the feasibility of including location information with a 988 call. As the Commission recognized in the 988 order, transmission of call location information is a technically complicated issue. Charter believes that any 988 location information solution should try to leverage existing 911 infrastructure, in particular next generation 911 systems, where possible. We encourage the FCC to leverage an industry forum or forums made up of industry experts designed to foster consensus on the operational requirements for 988 service providers or Lifeline call centers, and how to best design a 988 location information solution and apply similar liability protections and or safe harbors that exist for 911 originating carriers. In regards to the financial costs and potential risk to consumer privacy or other non-monetary costs, we think that this forum could make recommendations around funding mechanisms and appropriate uses of fees to avoid abuse. Some considerations could be consider encouraging the use of a general fund to cover operational costs in lieu of applying additional fees to telecommunication services. Or how 988 related funds should and should not be used. For example, for 988 crisis center equipment, communication services, and personnel. And also ensure that these fees, if they are required, are applied uniformly to all providers that will provide access to 988. And we think the forum may also want to consider recommendations to base such fees on access line or channel of each participating provider, as opposed to telephone number, and to cap the total number of lines per customer on which a state should impose fees to avoid duplicative charges on certain entities that may need or use multiple telephone numbers. We think the FCC, in coordination with this forum, should consider and clarify whether and where the location information is needed or wanted in the context of calls to 988. Some things to consider would be, do consumers have different expectations of privacy when making calls to 988 versus 911? Is it important for in mental health circumstances to offer the initial call without location information, or is that preferred? And if there's a point where the location information is needed for the 988 call, and can that information be added during a call transfer or message to 911 in emergency situations? So these are just the various points that we would like to present and for consideration in the report. And I'm open to any questions, if there are any.
Okay, anyone have any questions for Glenn? All right, Then hearing none, I will go to the next person with their hand raised, Tim Cagle. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair McKee. Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Cagle with Comcast. And just to be clear, I am not a technical expert on 988 or 911 geolocation, but I do want to share that Comcast is not taking a position on the need for automatic location identification, nor do we oppose adding automatic location requirements for 988. But we do acknowledge this is a highly complex issue. And as others have said, both Matt and Glenn, and I don't want to just repeat their comments, but I think it would be appropriate to defer this matter to the experts who have firsthand knowledge on the interaction with callers to understand how this would affect those callers. There are also many operational and other issues that would need to be resolved. A few examples would be around call routing. If the industry pursues, do we know how it will be used? Will suicide hotline answering centers need direct access to PSAPs? If pursued, should the industry consider a NINA I2 or a NINA I3 type solution that could query a single database and be relatively easily implemented by both VoIP and or CMRS providers? And as others have mentioned and the comments have been filed on the record, there are data privacy issues to be considered. There are also cost and cost recovery issues that must be considered as part of this process. And there may be liability issues to consider, as there may be both federal and state legislative protections for service providers who must design, implement, and or operate systems that can include significant complexities. So for these just brief reasons, Comcast would advocate that there is a forum and that the FCC would put that in their report to Congress, that the experts should convene to discuss this in more detail and make sure that we come up with a solution that works for in the best interest of the consumer. Yeah. So, and at that, that concludes my remarks, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks. Any questions for Tim? Okay, hearing none, I see Christine Hackman has her hand raised. Christine, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair McKee. This is Christine Hackman from US Telecom, and I just want to echo the sentiments of the other speakers. Obviously, each different voice service technology does present different technological challenges, opportunities, however we want to look at them. And right now, the core focus of US Telecom's members right now with our technological background is transitioning the 10-digit dialing for those 80 plus NPAs that Phil discussed earlier, and making sure that that work is done. So, that's really where the core focus is, but acknowledging that there's always room for improvements with 988, as Acting Chairwoman Rosenwursel alluded to earlier today. In looking at this issue, as all of the other speakers have said, there really has shown, a set of complex technical, operational, and the policy issues. And so with all of those, and, our comments went into the differences in the wireline technologies and routing the location information. And, this is definitely an area where wireline voice service providers have a significant history of providing location information when you look in the 911 context. But our initial investigation, our initial looking into this is demonstrated it's not just as easy as leveraging that system and flipping a switch, that there really are these complex issues. So for that reason, we really do support a lot of the other folks that have spoken earlier today. And encouraging that additional discussion should go on so we really have an idea of the full extent of the end-to-end technological challenges, important policy issues, and potential costs that would come with all of that before there is any final recommendation as to the feasibility of that. So we come out in a very similar position to the other folks that have spoken earlier today.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christine. Does anybody have any questions for her? Okay, if not, then I see Morgan Baker has a hand raised. Morgan, you can go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair McKee. I'm Morgan Baker. I'm the VP of Technology from Vibrant Emotional Health. We currently administer the existing Lifeline grant for SAMHSA. I just wanted to echo a lot of what the other individuals had said regarding, a more in-depth technical discussion. I think it's important to note that there are some differences between 988 and 911 technically as far as how the information, the geolocation information would be used, and the granularity of that information that would be required in what is essentially two scenarios, right, which was mentioned before, and that's the simple routing to the closest center, and then the dispatch of emergency services, which is, as mentioned, not used in the majority of the callers. So that said, I think, we may have more options regarding how this information is passed and the granularity of it. But as I said, it would be very beneficial for the technical minds to get together and discuss this and, review all the options that we have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Morgan? Okay, hearing none, I see Phil Lindsay has his hand raised. Go ahead, Phil.
Good morning. So I just wanted to kind of piggyback on Matt and Christine and everybody's comments around the need for, the further evaluation of the technical folks. As kind of a summary or kind of the themes that I saw within the comments, there were three purposes for the geolocation information. The first, which would be to route calls to the platform with information that would allow the platform to appropriately route calls to a local crisis center. And that makes, for calls that are routed just based on the NPA, the first three digits, including the area code, it would be helpful to have more specific information necessary to get the calls to the appropriate local resource. An additional theme was whether or not there could be a mobile crisis dispatch, so mental health professionals dispatched to that location. And then the third was, to transfer calls that may require emergency services. And in that last one, obviously, at least in current operations, 911 often takes calls where it's not necessarily necessary to dispatch emergency service, but the caller is actually calling 911 for mental health crisis. And so having the ability for that transfer to occur both ways potentially could be of benefit as well, right? So the significance here is this is a very different type arrangement. There are many more complications or many more issues around this than merely the 911 system that has been set up where calls automatically or essentially have been designed to go to that local public safety answering point. The complexities of each of these themes would need to be dealt with, and some of them could have technical solutions based on the privacy or the policy issues that confront each one of those themes. So it's the scope of this is much bigger than just should there be geolocation provided with a 988 call. It's really how is it used, and then what is necessary to facilitate how it's used appropriately, considering all the policy implications. Thanks. And I'll take any questions if anybody has any.
Okay, any questions for Phil? Okay, not hearing any. I see a hand raised by James Wright. You can go ahead.
Oh, perfect. Good morning, everyone. My name is James Wright. I'm the acting deputy director of the Veterans Crisis Line for the VA, and so one of the individual partners on the 988 initiative. So let me first pause for a second and thank everyone having this conversation today. It definitely is critical. And Phil, you just highlighted a number of things, and many of you has that I think are going to be extremely important for us to evaluate, regardless of the outcome. But beforehand, how a service is potentially used, as identified about privacy is important, and also what does the potential expansion of geolocation offer in identifying individuals in imminent danger or crisis. As we know, time can be critically of essence when we are taking a call at the VCL and also at the crisis centers in the Lifeline and trying to link up emergency intervention. And so anything that helps us expedite that and also helps us expand on our current searches. We have a significant challenge at times identifying individuals and then transferring that information over. We have to work with local law enforcement to ping individuals and identify locations. And at times we are based on some fairly rudimentary searching techniques on trying to help identify individuals. So anything from potential blocked access to VoIP access to any other items that individuals are using when we identify they're in imminent danger, if these options would help expand upon those, could potentially lead, and in my opinion, would lead to life-saving efforts. So I just want to thank the conversation and actually agree with the sentiments of the need for additional information and review. Particularly around how do we meet individuals' requests while also acting on their behalf when we need to help save a life. So thank you with that, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Madam Chair, this is Bob McCausland. I have one question for James Wright, if I may.
Yes, please go ahead, Bob.
Hi there, James. Thank you for joining us today. James, there clearly is a fundamental difference between 911 calls and crisis and suicide calls. With respect to the duration of most calls, do you have an approximate estimation of the average duration of a suicide or a crisis type call, and how may that affect the location information? In other words, if a crisis or suicide call were to begin and continue for a fairly lengthy period of time, but the location were to change multiple times during that lengthy call, how may that affect the need for updates to the location information during the duration of the call?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Bob. That's important to note. The thing that we have to be careful there is of generalizing a crisis call. We have some crisis calls where an individual is clearly upfront that they are going to end their life, and some that it takes a significant amount of time to build rapport with that individual and engage into that imminent risk support. And so I wouldn't want to generalize a time to respond. I will say that when we're engaged in a crisis call, that we take every avenue and effort to continue to gather information until we have ensured that localized support is received. And sometimes we do not succeed in identifying a location. Sometimes that location is misplaced or unknown, or is challenged based off of location awareness. And so I'm happy if there are additional questions to send it to us for a more formal response. But I will say that those situations vary drastically. We can have a very, very, very critical imminent risk situation call that is a matter of minutes and some that take hours.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for James? Okay, not seeing any. So I don't see any other hands raised. Is there anyone else who'd like to say anything at this point?
This is Rosemary with T-Mobile. I just wanted to quick say for the record that if the FCC still needs more information after this call today to prepare for their April 11th comments, if they needed the Nancy to do any more work on this or bring people together, which seems to be a theme. I don't know if we wait for Congress or wait for after the 11th to start that process or not. I don't know what that looks like, but I'm happy to help facilitate anything that needs to be done. And I just wanted to say that out loud. Sometimes back in the day, we used to put an issue management group and IMG together. It's something that has a beginning and an end, a clear beginning and an end. If that was something that the Nancy wanted to do, after the FCC looks at all these comments today, if they needed more, please feel free to reach out to me and I will do whatever I can to help. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Anyone else want to comment on this topic? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands. So if we don't have any other council members that wish to speak to the 988 geolocation discussion at this time, I can conclude the discussion portion of our meeting. And thank you all once again. I know this is a kind of a strange procedure for us, but given the short time frame for the commission to get their report out, they thought this would be the best way for them to get the information from this group into the records. So they will be reviewing the transcript of this meeting as they prepare their report. So now we will move on to the public comments and participation portion of the meeting. In the public notice that was released on December 31st, members of the public were directed to submit any comments via the Commission's electronic comment filing system and docket CC 92-237. Does the FCC staff see any comments from members of the public in the docket that we need to address?
Hi, Chair McKee. No, we don't see any comments from the public for the Nancy in that docket.
Okay. Thanks, Jordan. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this meeting, we also accommodate public participation through the live questions at fcc.gov email address. Have we received any questions via email to read aloud at this time?
No, Chair McKee. I don't see any public participation emails coming through that inbox at this time.
Okay, thank you again. Now, before we wrap up our meeting today, is there any other business that we need to discuss? Okay, our further Nancy meetings scheduled for 2021 will be announced at a later date. We don't have them for you right now, but they will be forthcoming. And once we have those dates, then the commission staff will send out an email letting us all know. Bruce, is there anything you would like to add before we wrap up the meeting?
No, thank you, Chair McKee. Although maybe I should make a mention of this. My term as commissioner is up at the end of March. There's a possibility of serving a little bit longer until a replacement is found. But I'm very interested in being active in working on this 988 problem. Once the term is up, Maine has been a pioneer. I think it was one of the first states in the United States to have a next-gen
is now exiting
system, and we've had some internal conversations about the complexity of dealing with mental health calls through the existing PSAP system. So it's something that's of deep interest to me, and I hope I can be useful in the future. But other than that, I appreciate the meeting today. I thought it was a very good one. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bruce. We appreciate you letting us know. Jordan, do we have anything else from the commission before we finish?
No, Chair McKee, nothing from the commission. Thank you, and thank you to all.
Haley Williamson.
Okay, great. Well, then if there's nothing else, I want to thank you all again for your time today and for all the valuable input that you gave. Please stay safe, and our Nancy meeting is adjourned.